Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz, a podcast that provides both education and inspiration for those of us in or interested in the weddings and event industry. If you missed last episode, it was with David Tutera, celebrity planner and designer, with a very heart-to-heart conversation. Today, we are talking again with celebrated event designer and producer Colin Cowie. Colin has created some of the most talked about parties and events around the world, with a roster of clients like Oprah Winfrey, Jerry Seinfeld, Ryan Seacrest, Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, Kim Kardashian, Nicole Kidman, heads of state, and foreign dignitaries. Having spanned the globe multiple times, he has traveled over 16 million miles in search of the finest and most authentic experiences for his clients. Colin is also the author of 11 books on lifestyle and entertaining, and recently published the wonderful book that I highly recommend, The Gold Standard, Giving Your Customers What They Didn't Know They Wanted. As a celebrated television personality, he spent 8 years on the CBS Morning Show, 8 years on NBC's Today Show, 7 on HSN Network, and hosted his own show for 5 years on the WE Network. Colin has been on The Wedding Biz several times, and each one is so well worth listening to. Just go to theweddingbiz.com, type his name in the search field to find out which episodes he was on. So enjoy this brand new conversation all about the concept of reinvention with Colin Cowie. Hey, Colin, so good to have you back again. I appreciate you doing this.
Always a pleasure to chat with you, Andy, and we always have great conversations. So looking forward to our time together this morning.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So Colin, we first met, a little over 20 years ago, and you had already experienced what any professional in the events industry would consider an enormous amount of success. And since then, our industry has evolved and it's changed dramatically, not to mention how saturated the market has become. And yet, you seem to have retained and even grown your brand to new heights and in a variety of ways. And I believe that a huge factor in that is how much and how well you reinvent yourself time and time again. Do I have that right? Do you agree?
100%. The funny thing is, I've known you a little over 20 years, but this year in September the 16th will be my 40th anniversary of being in business. And, there used to be a time many, many years ago when you would say, we're going to rebrand, we're going to regroup, and we're going to relaunch. But I think today we're in a constant state of rebranding and relaunching and reinventing. And if you don't, you get left behind. And I've always kind of thought of myself as a trailblazer, as a trendsetter. Actually, I don't like the word trend because I think trends come and go very quickly. But I like to think that, we're always thinking to be ahead of the curve, so to speak. And it's what gives you a competitive edge. It's the only way that you really get to stay relevant these days. And it's very, very easy to fall behind. And I think you have to look at life with a 360 point of view. Every one of your touch points, whether it's your social media, whether it's the product that you're turning out, the staff that you're dealing with, how you're motivating those teams. You're in a constant state of making sure that everything is working to its full capacity and it is optimum. I kind of think of it sometimes like spinning plates. When you're spinning plates, the magician, but sometimes we think we've got a dinner service for 24 up there.
But it seems that, the very first step, and I don't know that everybody really looks at it this way, is to, you mentioned the constant state of change, is that we have to embrace that. That's the first step. And I think that for some people, that's a struggle.
Well, you really don't have an option, Andy. Just think about it. In the beginning, we relied on traditional media, right? And you did your best to get noticed by a magazine, a newspaper, get yourself on a TV show. Then all of a sudden it opened up and we had social media, right? So it's one thing to have a social media presence. And then the world became very, very flooded and oversaturated. We don't need another single product, right? The whole idea is how do we stand out in the crowd and how do we grab attention in a saturated market, right? We live in an industry where there's no barrier to entry, right? Anyone can, with some creative skills and a website and a social media presence, can be your competition today. So if you don't look at all these things, you will get left behind, Social media used to be the idea of having, a website and being able to post. Now there's a complete science to it, right? As to what are your messages in terms of what you're putting out in stories, and how does that lead to your actual post? And if they're doing a real good job with that, then they'll go and they'll have a look at your website, knowing that they're going to spend 30 seconds on your website before they look at the next website.
If that.
Yeah. So it's become very, very competitive, and it's become a science in a way. So it's not only, what we do, but it's the product that we put out there and how we share that with the rest of the world and what our messaging is.
Well, I imagine that you get a ton of ideas. I mean, obviously, you're very creative. You must have a lot of ideas. How do you determine which one to follow? I mean, do you first, do you test the market in any way to see how it will be embraced? What's your process for going through all those ideas and picking one and going for it?
I must say there's one mistake that I might have made was trying to take on too many things at once versus maybe having a look and really testing the waters before you move forward with something. But I think today, we just need to look at what our competitors are doing, and we go to industry events and we learn from professionals what are the current trends. And in terms of, how you're communicating what it is that you're selling to your audience out there, and how you're able to take that and turn those messages into a transaction, right? So, you play with ideas and you start something, you see if it resonates. And if it resonates, you go a little deeper with it. And if that works, and then you realize you can be doing that for 8 or 9 months, then all of a sudden there'll be a shift in the way people are doing things and how things are being done. And all of a sudden it's a whole different story and a whole different ball game. So, that's why I say we're in a constant state of reinvention. And I just look at all the things that I learned through the pandemic. The most telling was, I just thrown this amazing wedding in South Africa for myself, and an 8-9 day wedding. Came back and all I got was the pandemic, wedding bills, and cancellations. And I had to think, so how do I reinvent myself? How do I make sure that I don't lose this incredible team of people? Because without my team of people, all I am is a good idea. So I had to think, what could I do? And I was in New York City, and one gray morning, the weather was gray. I was wearing gray. My apartment was 50 shades of gray. And I looked outside, and the gray HMS Mercy was coming down the Hudson River. And I thought to myself, wow, I got to get out of here. And I thought to myself, who could use my services? So I looked at 3 real estate developers who are developing big projects, long-term projects in South Florida. I called them and I set up meetings. I got on a plane and I came down to Miami and went to see these people. And I went back with 2 contracts. And I was able to prove that I could bring value to them in a downtime when I had downtime, and allowed me to redirect my team. So I was able to keep my team of people together.
What did you do for them? Could you explain that?
Yes, of course. So the one was the Boca Raton. The Boca Raton Club had just been bought for $250 million by MSD Capital. And if you're familiar with the property, there's 50 acres with a golf course and everything on the one side of the water. And then on the beach side, they have 2 acres of beachfront and a beach club. And the 50 acres was closing down for a major 3-year renovation. And they had 4,000 members, and they were all coming to the beach club. And I saw the beach club. I said, wow, this looks like no one's given this any love in the last 20 years. It was tired. It had no energy. The interior decoration was terrible. And I said, you know what? I could really fix this for you. So I brought my team on board, and we redecorated and redesigned the entire lobby. We did it in 90 days. We set up 2 different bars for them. We did a whole new sense of arrival. We created a pop-up restaurant outside called Mirasol, which is under a huge big tent and canopy, so it allowed people to be able to dine outdoors. And then we looked at everything. We redid uniforms, we did plates, dishes, music, all the things that we would do, what you smell, touch, taste, see, and hear in doing a party. We created a permanent installation for them, and the members were thrilled. And that kept me busy for 3 years.
Wow. Well, and that didn't that kick off for you? I don't know if you want to call it another division, but then you started to do similar things with other properties.
Yes. So yes, and so I ended up working with Fort Partners and with Pier 66. They were still in the planning stage. Their property has gone live now. I worked with them very, very closely, looking at all their floor plans, and said, this is how you're designing a ballroom? I said, I'm an event planner. I've worked in more ballrooms than anyone around this table has. This is what we're looking for. And all of a sudden they started to listen to us. And then we looked at the pool deck, and I said, all you've got there is 600 chaise lounges, but if you drilled these holes over here, you could put a canopy and a tent in. If you did a walkway across the pool, you could do fashion shows. If you were able to set this up over here, you could do brunches on a Sunday. So we created other additional revenue streams for them that architects and traditional designers had never thought of. Then I thought to myself, wow, I'm really onto something here. So I launched a company called Thrive Hospitality. And since then, we have been able to work with many different brands and developers. Not only did we do the opening of the Fontainebleau Hotel in Las Vegas, which was a massive big success, but we spent 8 months training and educating and working with their butlers, with all of their front of house staff, in really training them and teaching them what were the principles of great customer service and how we make you feel, and proactive customer service, and the things we could do where we could use data, information, technology, and AI to find information where we could craft guest experiences, where we could anticipate your unanticipated needs. So this has opened up a whole new avenue for me and allowed me to really work in areas that I haven't worked in before. And the reason I wanted to do this is we also work in a very fickle business. The moment there's one hiccup in the market, all of a sudden the events stop flowing, right? And all of a sudden people get scared to spend. And when you have long-term contracts like this in place, it allows you to weather the storm a whole lot easier. So basically, in essence, not all your eggs are in one basket. And around the same time, I launched my last book, my 11th book, The Gold Standard. I called it The Gold Standard, giving your customers what they didn't know they wanted. Right? And, that's the whole idea of how do we stand out in the crowd? How do we grab attention in a saturated market? What are the things we can do to really make sure that we're running our businesses right and as ready as possible so we do have a competitive edge over everyone else in that space?
I've been asked where I gain the inspiration and expertise to host this show, The Wedding Biz, and it all comes from my own experience in the weddings and event industry of creating world-class entertainment to support our custom entertainment design. Kushner Entertainment features outrageously dynamic bands, strings, and a host of other entertainment acts that have won numerous international, national, and local to the Washington, D.C. area awards, not only for individual acts, such as the band Sound Connection, but also for our highly engaging and captivating entertainment design concepts. Go to KushnerEntertainment.com to learn more about the ultimate in event entertainment. That's KushnerEntertainment.com. I imagine that you've had attempts at reinvention that have not worked out, but I'm sure you learned enough from those experiences to get to the next level, but not every attempt works out. Or I imagine you've experienced that.
100%. No, I remember in 2008 when the market crashed, I had just raised a considerably huge amount of money to launch a big wedding program online. And the market had crashed around us. The world was in a really bad state of repair. As you know, it was a global recession. And I was kind of caught in the crosshairs. I was in this big expansion mode. I had a staff of nearly 80 people. I had a high burn rate in what we were developing tech with. And all of a sudden, the world came crumbling around me. And it was such a valuable lesson for me because, I've used the analogy many times because I've had many, many hiccups along the way, and I have weathered many, many storms. And, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And, the analogy I use is kind of like a surfer. When a surfer's surfing the waves, and you're on top of the wave, you're just focused on how good you look, how good you feel, how good you look and feel to everybody else, right? You don't really learn that much other than maybe honing your skill. But if you really want to learn lessons, when you fall off that board and you're trying to get back on the board and there's water all around you coming in different directions, that's where you really learn the lessons in life. So, I'm grateful for my journey, for all the knocks and bumps along the way. They helped me shape me into who I am today. And, I said, we all went to very different academic institutions. I went to the University of whatever it takes, and I got my PhD in Knox and Falls.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and you're also talking about building an incredible amount of resilience and the persistence level that you have. I mean, it seems that that's obviously a factor in all of this too.
At the end of the day, and I think I said this earlier on, without a team of people, right, you're just an idea. And I have an extraordinary team of people around me, and it's my responsibility to look after them, to make sure that the company can always provide, and that there's stability, and that we do all the right things. And in a competitive world and competitive space with a lot of revolving doors, what are the things we can do to make sure that our teams don't jump ship? Right? So it's kind of like taking care of your family as well. There's a lot that goes into the amount of responsibility. So it's not an option not to show up. It's not an option not to succeed, right? You do whatever it takes.
But let's talk about it, since you bring up, the teams, and isn't there, there's a certain amount of fear and uncertainty that comes with change. So I wonder how you encourage your team to embrace, the various aspects of reinvention that you bring to them, and creativity. How do you deal with them, the team dynamics?
Well, first of all, I don't think you bring anything completely radical, right? And you do things as a team. There is no I in team, right? So I've never been the person that walked into the office and said, "Oh, well, as of tomorrow, we're doing things this way." So you bring it up in staff meetings and in producers meetings or in a marketing meeting, and you say, "What do we think of this idea? Okay, why don't we all spend some time thinking how we would contribute to this idea?" And then you listen to everyone at the table, and then you learn so much more. You see, you can't work. Your vision can come from the top down, right? That's who we are. That is what we want to be, okay? Your mission, how we're going to get there, comes from the bottom, right? So the vision will come from me, but the mission, how we're going to get there, comes from me tapping into my team members and asking them, "What do you think of this idea? What do you think of this idea?" Until you can find that there's a mutual conversation that we're happening, right? And then we take those ideas and we make them concrete, right? Then we map it all out, and then we put a plan behind it, and we figure out how we're going to roll it out. That way, I'm not telling people how we're going to do things. I've already got buy-in from my team. So it comes together as a group, right? I think this idea of banging people over the head and say, "This is how you do it," that's a management style from another century that's gone by. I think this idea of collaborating, and listen, you only surround yourself with smart people. So you should be prepared to listen to that, every point of view.
And I was going to ask you, how do you leverage their existing strengths, in a new direction? And you just answered it. By having them participate in the process, it's automatic.
Yeah. Buy-in, the most important.
You talked about the 40th anniversary of being in business like this. I always wonder, in other previous conversations that we've had, you talk about how you go, 1,000 miles a minute and you love it. You have such a fun time as well. I wonder, do you ever have moments of feeling burned out? 40 years nonstop, and what I'm leading to is I imagine that this process of reinvention I'm assuming is what keeps you from feeling burnt out. Is that accurate?
I've never considered the idea of burnout. A, it's not an option, right? And B, I still love what I do. I still enjoy the fact that I have a very, very curious mind that takes me to wonderful places. It opens incredible doors for me. I get to meet amazing people in extraordinary circumstances and do magical things, right? So what is burnout? Burnout means that you can't cope with what you're dealing with. So fortunately, I'm able to cope very well with what I deal with. I'm surrounded by a smart group of people who are also as committed as what I am. And I'm as excited today as I was 40 years ago when I literally got up a boat with $400 in my back pocket, one well-cut suit, and an omnipresent suntan, right?
Right.
So, I don't kind of feel I'm anywhere near burnout. There are many, many more projects that I want to do, some that I haven't even started yet that aren't even related to our industry. But I think that's life. We've got one time to do this. We've got one journey to go around. Why waste?
Earlier you referred to technology, as a role in all of this. How are you dealing with, what do you think of AI? And I'm going to assume you've already embraced it,
Well, I think AI is incredible. And I think, we're in very formative stages. And the more I play with it, the more I learn, the more I see, the more I start to realize the potential for it, right? So we started off using ChatGPT to write notes and letters and creative briefs, right? Then we started working with apps to start help with how we can do things creatively. And now, once a week, we sit with our head of IT who shows us something else that we can do in AI. And I think what's going to happen in the future is just, it's amazing. I mean, it's going to take us to another whole new level. And I think we've just discovered the tip of the iceberg, literally. I mean, when you see what AI is doing now with sorting images and databases of your archives and things like that, we're starting to work with technology in our company. You have the same thing. Listen, if you're looking at WhatsApp, right? Every WhatsApp now has got an AI component. Every search engine's got an AI component next to it. We're just not used to using it. If you start to use it and ask it questions, it's amazing what happens. It's kind of like playing with a new toy. So I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. And I would imagine if we had this conversation in 3 years' time, we look back and say, I can't believe we would ever get to this point in life, how AI has affected and changed the way we work and operate and communicate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think this will be at least as big as the internet. I mean, this is, like you say, it's the tip of the iceberg. Also, I saw in Instagram that you opened an office in Florence. I'm so jealous. That's my favorite. I love Florence. Tell me about that. I know you've always worked all around the world, but now you have a physical presence of some kind there?
Well, we have a production company there who we work very closely with on a lot of events in the past, and a lot of weddings that are not your big 7-figure weddings all the time. It's a big area of business. A lot of people don't want to spend the money to bring a US planner and fly a whole team of people there. The idea to create an alliance and have made a joint venture to open an office together allows us and allows the American bride to, in this time zone, in this language, to do all of her design, all of her creative and everything, and allows us to produce that wedding in Florence without taking a team of 10 people with us. So I think it kind of works for everyone. We have tremendous faith in our partner there, and she has great faith in us. And I think it just gives us, once again, a competitive edge financially to be able to create design, produce over here, and execute over there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations on that. That's wonderful. So before we go, is there anything else perhaps you'd want to say that I haven't asked about, again, staying with the topic of retaining longevity, remaining relevant, through the process of reinvention? Is there anything else that I might have missed?
I think that we just have to have a very curious and inquisitive eye, and that we're always looking for opportunity, right? Look at every one of your touch points. Look at your product. Look at what you're turning out, how you're presenting it, how you're selling it. And look at all areas of your business, because as you finish doing one cycle of it, it's ready to start that cycle again. What are your competitors doing? Who's got a better site? Who's really resonating with a certain thing that they're doing with their Instagram or with Facebook or with TikTok or Pinterest, right? Realizing that there's always room for improvement, and we're in a constant state of reinvention.
Absolutely. Well, Colin, look, I think this conversation, all our conversations are amazing. And by the way, I want to mention to listeners, when you mentioned your last book, The Gold Standard, giving your customers what they didn't know what they wanted, I want to urge people to listen to episode 512, where we talked all about that, because that was just so valuable. But I think today's conversation is also, one of the most critical ones is how to keep reinventing ourselves. So I really appreciate hearing your perspective on it. And congratulations again on 40 years anniversary. That's amazing.
Thank you, Andy. Just to the point on the gold standard, I really wrote that book as a refresher that anyone could do to look at their business, because speaking of reinvention, from the first page to the last page, there are all a lot of practical ideas in the book that anyone can do or should be doing to make sure that you're running at 100% efficiency. Like a simple thing like your vision and your mission statement and your guiding principles. When last did you refresh those, right? When last did you make sure that you're all the exact same team on the same page, working towards the same goal because all your thoughts are aligned? From there on all the way through, why failure is an important part of success. And how do we stand out in the crowd? I've gotten such great and positive feedback from the book that I'm planning to do what would the second version of that book look like.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Colin Cowie. Please note Colin's 2 Instagram handles, which are at Colin Cowie and at Colin Cowie Lifestyle. You could find his websites at colincowie.com, also thrivehospitality.com. And be sure to share this with 3 good friends who you feel would benefit from this episode. And I know we probably all have a lot more than 3 who could really love listening to Colin talk about reinvention. And our next episode is going to be a very special message from me. So be sure to tune back in. And finally, follow The Wedding Biz on Instagram at The Wedding Biz, and we'll catch you next time.